Hey, I'm Jason. This is All Things Rome. Today is Sunday episode number 6, and we're talking about the Citizen Aqualand Promaster Diver. Now, this watch is not the most expensive watch in my collection. However, I think this is probably the tooliest watch in my collection because it was designed for one thing and one thing only, and that is to read depths during a dive. But not digitally like my computer, but in an analog fashion. So for people like me, it's more aesthetic to the eyes. Now, I'm not a big digital watch person. In fact, the only digital watch I own is the Casio World Time. And that appealed to me because of multiple different functions of the watch. Not necessarily the digital display of the time, but I really love that little tiny world, that globe up in the corner where I can go through each and every time zone listed on that globe. So it's easier to read while you're traveling. Plus, it's 30 bucks. Now, the functionality of this watch beats out any diver that I own, to include my Rolex Submariner, because the Rolex Submariner, let's be real, is a time only with 300 meters of depth. Now, yes, this watch only has 200 meters of depth. However, it has a lot of functionality behind it. Now, this is the Citizen Aqualand version of the Promaster Diver. In fact, the Citizen Promaster Diver is actually what rung me in, is what brought me in to the actual authorized dealer of this, because I was going through in the mall and I noticed these little scuba tanks in the display case. Now that caught my eye because I was like, well, that's pretty badass. So I walked over there and I started looking at the watches. Like, oh, well, how much is this? How much is this? And I went home, because you never buy anything on an urge or an impulse, because you're gonna regret basically everything you buy if it's on impulse. Plus, you could probably get it cheaper somewhere else, like online. So I started doing my research and I found the Citizen Aqualand version of the Promaster Diver that offered the depth sensor in the watch itself. Now let's go over the watch. Now the watch is a little bit bulky at 15 millimeters high. However, it doesn't sit overly large on the wrist. In fact, it's fairly comfortable. One of the things that I love the most about this watch is the strap that comes with it. Now the strap is like a rubber silicone, but it's extremely sticky. So it's not sticky to the skin, it's sticky to itself, because anybody who has ever had a silicone band, you know that once you put the band in these loops, it will slide around, pull out. It doesn't matter how much you spent on them. Well, this really does lock down in place. I don't know what necessarily they used, but one of the most difficult things to do is get the watch on and off, which is not a bad thing if you're underwater, especially 100 feet underwater. Now, inside the watch is the Eco Drive that's driving the engine of this watch, and it is the only true quartz watch that I own. The other two watches that I own are Mecha Quartz movements, which, you know, is a hybrid. It's debatable, but this is the only true quartz watch that I own. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I'm actually doing a video next week or the week after that gives you the case for owning a quartz watch, like why, the reasons why you should buy a quartz watch. So if you're interested, make sure you hit that notification bell, drop me a like, hit the subscribe button so you guys can watch that video. Now, the watch itself is very aesthetically pleasing to me. I love the blue color. I love the brushed stainless steel all along the edge because it's not too shiny underwater. You don't want a lot of shiny stuff underwater. Trust me. Crystal itself is going to shine enough under the water where it may distract any type of wildlife, especially if you're doing something like spear fishing. So it's nice to see that they took something like that into consideration and try to make it as dull as possible, but still pleasing to the eye. Now you can see, again, this is analog. Now, nobody's gonna use this watch to go scuba diving, really. They're gonna use their dive computer like I would use my dive computer. However, this is still nice to have on vacation. Like if I wanted to go to Hawaii, not go scuba diving, but I wanted to go spearfishing, or I wanted to go free diving, or I just wanted to explore the underwater, but I don't know how deep I am and I really want to know. Well, this is a good thing because it does have a depth sensor on it. Now you can see at the 9 o'clock position, it does have a gauge that says ready at the top, empty at the bottom. Now this gauge acts as two different things. It both tells you the charge of the eco drive inside, and it also tells you when the computer is ready to start reading depth. Now once you put this in the water, water enters in through the side at the 9 o'clock position through the sensor and immediately goes up the ready position. Now once you start diving underneath the water, you can see that the red hand right there at the 3 o'clock will start rotating clockwise. Deeper and deeper you go. Now inside the chapter ring, you can see that they're rated for meters. Again, I wouldn't have used meters, I would have used feet, only because generally around the world, feet is accepted when it comes to diving. Most people would say, hey, my maximum depth is 33 feet. Now you can argue meters all day long. In fact, I'm sure I'll hear meter comments in the comments below, because generally speaking around the world, everybody uses the metric system except America and one other place. But I can't remember what it is because it's basically unimportant. But you can see inside the chapter ring, it does read meters, and the way that it's designed is so every 5 minutes is 5 meters. So a quick glance down at the watch, it's not hard to really determine I'm 10 meters down or I'm 15 meters down. You don't necessarily have to look inside the chapter ring itself. Now, I really like the fact that this has the Pepsi style bezel configuration, not a true Pepsi style with the top half being red and the bottom half being blue. However, I really like this aluminum bezel, how the first 20 minutes is red and the rest is blue. So it does have a nice color pop. All in all, this is the tooliest watch I have. Most of my watches are either chronographs or they're time only. Now, for the second half of the video, I'm going to be giving you guys the option on choosing my next watch purchase. I am really going back and forth between two different styles of Moonphase watches. Now, this is from a watch company called Agelocer, and I can't find any actual reviews on these watches, but I've been looking at this Moonphase for a very long time. It's similar to the Christopher Ward C1 Moonphase. However, instead of only having the Moonphase on the top half, it's the Moonphase throughout the entire watch. So throughout the entire 28-day cycle, it'll sort of go around the entire face of the watch. Now, I really like that. It's really appealing. However, I am a watch collector and I'm a watch enthusiast. And because I'm very enthusiastic about this hobby, I'm very nitpicky about the details when it comes to watches. Now, I say that because I'm going to pick out a few things on these pictures that I'm going to show you and why I'm having a hard time choosing. Well, if you look at the first one that has the starry night throughout the entire thing, the entire face of the watch is blue, stainless steel accents. Now, this is a very dressy watch, and I like the fact the moon pops. It has a nice 3D pop. Well, one thing that I don't like is if you look around where the minute track is, you can see that there's a gap on the disc that the moon actually sits. So at an angle, it's very noticeable because the minute track around the outside matches the same color as the wheel itself that's also spinning. So that is sort of, I know it's nitpicky, but it bothers me. And if you look at this other one, now it does have the famous Starry Night picture like close to the center of the watch, and it's opposing on the outside minute track that's white, but it still has the same blue disc where the moon is. And the difference in the depth of the watch looks a little different, looks a little better. Not necessarily a fan of that Starry Night picture. I really don't want that on my watch. It may be cool for some people, it's not cool for me. However, I really like the fact that there's contrast between that minute and that moon disc. And it's not, and that gap is not as noticeable. In fact, it's not really noticeable at all, like when you have the same colors, and then the only thing that's contrasting is the gap in the disc itself. So I'm going back and forth with these watches, and I really don't know. So I'd really like to see what you guys have to say about which one I should choose. Should I choose the full blue background? That's the one I'm leaning for a little bit more. I'm like 60-40, 60 on the blue, and then 40 on the Starry Night Moonphase. So I would like to hear what you guys have to say in the descriptions below. Now I have a lot of videos coming up in the future. Again, I'm trying to stick to the schedule of Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday. So make sure you guys hit that notification bell, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment of the content you guys would like to see on this channel. I have a lot of dive stuff coming up next week, a lot of dive stuff coming up the week after that. I'm going to be re-reviewing my Dedepu 1 liter dive tank, my Smapco 0.5 liter dive tank. We're talking about fins, we're talking about drown proofing, and we're talking about using different types of knives, both expensive, both cheap, and we're going to be doing a lot of this stuff next week. So I'll be releasing those videos in the future. I'm also doing more electronics reviews, but you know what? Again, I'm a watch enthusiast, and this is a mostly watch channel, but all things random, so you're gonna get a little bit of everything. I have a lot of watch stuff coming up also. More watch stuff this week. Next week, watch and dive stuff. The week after that is watch and dive stuff as well. So again, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next one.